There's a moment, small and seemingly insignificant, that changes everything. You're a mature woman, maybe in your 40s or 50s. You've built a life. Maybe you've raised children, perhaps navigated a divorce or a long-term relationship that ended. You've worked hard, evolved, and reached a place of self-awareness that wasn't always there in your 20s or even 30s. And now you meet someone unexpected, a younger man. There's chemistry, interest, an electric spark you didn't see coming. At first, it's exhilarating. Conversations flow. He seems intrigued, even enchanted. There's laughter, shared glances, the beginnings of something that feels alive and full of possibility. But then something shifts. It's hard to name, subtle, almost imperceptible. He remains polite, maybe even kind, but the energy changes. The magnetic pull that was there at the start begins to fade. You wonder, was it the age difference? Was it my wrinkles? Did he just suddenly realize I'm not what he wants? But here's the truth. It was none of those things. It wasn't your age. It wasn't your appearance. It wasn't your life circumstances. The real difference, the one that separates a mature woman who builds a lasting connection with a younger man from one who was only briefly entertained or politely tolerated, is something more subtle. And it's something most women get wrong without even realizing it. Let's start by unraveling the biggest myth first, that age gap. Relationships are primarily about looks, youthfulness, or keeping up with the energy of a younger man. That idea couldn't be more misleading. I've spent years observing, coaching, and listening to the stories of hundreds of women who have successfully created passionate, deeply connected relationships with younger men. And I've also heard the stories of women who've tried, only to be met with awkwardness, rejection, or confusion they couldn't quite explain. Over time, a clear pattern emerged, and what I found was both surprising and empowering. The women who succeed in these relationships are not the youngest looking. They're not the richest or most outwardly impressive. They don't try to act like they're 25. In fact, they do the opposite of what most relationship advice tells them to do. Here's what they do. They don't compete with youth. They offer something youth can't. And it all begins with how they see themselves. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're a 45-year-old woman at a social event. You've recently stepped back into the dating world. Across the room, you meet the gaze of a 32-year-old man. He approaches, you talk, and something clicks. There's chemistry, not just physical, but energetic. He listens. You laugh. There's a flow. But then, someone casually mentions your age. You see a flicker of change in his expression. He remains engaged, but you can feel the shift. What you do in that moment matters more than you know. Most women, unfortunately, fall into the trap of self-deprecation or overcompensation. They start making jokes about being the older woman, begin explaining their life story as if to justify their value, or shift into an almost maternal protective energy. And in doing so, they send one devastating message. I think I'm not enough. Without saying a word, their body language, their tone, their sudden shift in energy begins communicating insecurity, an unconscious plea for approval, for permission to still be seen as desirable. That message is felt on a visceral level, and in that moment, the man, who may have felt attraction, curiosity, and genuine interest, begins to see her not as a potential partner, but as something else entirely, a caretaker, a mentor, or worse, a mother figure. And here's the crux. A younger man who is attracted to a mature woman is not looking for another mother. He's looking for a partner, an equal, a woman with presence, not permission. This brings us to the first and most subtle behavioral mistake that mature women make. They slip into the role of caretaker. It doesn't happen consciously, but it shows up in little ways, offering advice even when he didn't ask for it, trying to protect him from bad decisions he needs to make himself. Always being available, as if her value lies in proving she has time for him. Trying to solve his problems with life experience, rather than simply listening. The irony? These women believe they're being helpful, supportive, nurturing. But to him, it triggers something deeply primal. The son archetype, not the lover. Let me give you a real-world example. Maria, a 50-year-old client of mine, met David, a 35-year-old man. At a conference, they hit it off. He was charming, smart, and full of ideas about his startup. She was inspired by his energy and impressed by his ambition. But over time, things cooled. He texted less. The spark faded. Maria was heartbroken and confused. What went wrong? When we reviewed their dynamic, a clear pattern emerged. Maria had stepped into a guiding role. Whenever David shared a work problem, she launched into solutions. When he expressed excitement about taking a risk, she calmly offered the voice of caution. Her intention was good, but she had unwittingly become his life coach, not his partner. David didn't want a supervisor. He wanted someone to dream with, to feel excited around, to connect with emotionally, not intellectually. This is where many women go wrong. They believe their wisdom must be given, their experience shared, their life knowledge dispensed. But unsolicited advice, even if well-intentioned, kills the possibility of romantic connection. Because the truth is, attraction is not rational. It's not based on credentials. It's emotional, energetic. It thrives in the space of equality, mystery, and mutual discovery. When a woman moves into the role of expert, the relationship becomes unbalanced. And in romantic dynamics, imbalance kills intimacy. So what works instead? Authenticity, confidence, the ability to listen rather than lead, the willingness to be present instead of proving something, a refusal to compete with younger women, and instead, offering what only you can, depth, presence, and grounded femininity. Because a younger man who is genuinely drawn to a mature woman is not looking for someone to teach him. He's looking for someone to inspire him. And inspiration doesn't come from control. It comes from being. We've established that one of the most common pitfalls mature women fall into when attracted to a younger man is stepping into the role of caretaker. But closely linked to that, sometimes even more damaging, is a second pattern, overcompensation. This shows up the moment a woman feels the pressure to make up for something, whether it's the age gap, past relationships, or physical changes. She starts trying to prove her value rather than simply embody it. At first glance, it might seem harmless. She emphasizes her accomplishments. She highlights her stability. She mentions her career success, her property, the places she's traveled, the life she's built. And while all of these things are genuinely impressive, the energy behind how and why she shares them makes all the difference. Here's what I mean. If a woman talks about her achievements with joy and confidence, with no attachment to how they'll be received, it's magnetic. But if she shares them with the subtle, or not so subtle, intent of convincing him she's still got it, it creates a very different effect. One that feels transactional and oddly disconnected. Because in that moment, the man isn't experiencing her. He's experiencing her resume. Let's go deeper. Imagine being on a date. You're sitting across from someone who keeps listing their qualifications, their job title, their financial independence, their ability to handle anything. At some point, you stop feeling like you're getting to know a person and start feeling like you're sitting through a pitch. That's exactly how it feels for many younger men in these dynamics. And it's confusing for them because they're not usually drawn to a mature woman for her career or her money. They're drawn to her energy, her essence, the calm, grounded, confident way she carries herself, her sensuality, her mystery. But when she overcompensates, all of that gets lost in translation. Let me tell you about Carmen. Carmen was 48, recently single, and had spent the last few years building a very successful real estate business. When she met Andres, a 34-year-old graphic designer, she felt an instant spark. He was artistic, emotionally intelligent, and had an adventurous spirit that reminded her of a younger version of herself. On their first few dates, things seemed to go well. They had great conversations. But Carmen noticed that whenever the topic of age came up, even casually, she felt an inner tension. So she started overcorrecting. She made jokes about being the grown-up in the room, tried to impress Andres with stories about her success, and constantly mentioned her independence. Her intention was to present herself as worthy, as someone who had her life together, who didn't need anything from him. But what Andres felt was that Carmen was on the defensive, that she didn't truly believe she was enough as she was, that underneath the success there was a deep need for validation. The result? He pulled back. It wasn't because Carmen was older. It wasn't because he didn't find her attractive. It was because she was trying too hard to prove something. And in doing so, disconnected from the most attractive part of herself, her presence. Here's something that many women don't realize: true attraction rarely has to be convinced. It doesn't need bullet points or demonstrations. It's a felt sense, a connection that grows from authenticity, not performance. So what does this mean in practice? It means you don't need to lead with your resume. You don't need to constantly remind him how stable or independent or accomplished you are. You don't need to fill every silence with stories of your achievements or commentary on how well you've aged. Instead, you need to bring him into your world. Let him feel your energy, not just hear about your accomplishments. Let him discover you, rather than being presented with a fully packaged narrative. And above all, let there be space for intimacy to grow. Because connection is not something you talk someone into. It's something you reveal through being. This brings us to another crucial piece of the puzzle: the obsession with youthfulness. It's completely natural to want to look and feel your best. There's nothing wrong with taking care of your skin, dressing well, or being mindful of your body. These are acts of self-respect and self-love. The problem arises when those choices are rooted not in self-expression but in desperation. When a woman tries to compete with 20-somethings on their own turf, instead of offering what makes her uniquely magnetic. Let me be clear. No matter how many cosmetic treatments you invest in, you will never out-youth a 25-year-old. And you don't need to. Because here's the irony. The very thing that sets you apart, your maturity, your depth, your lived experience, is what he is likely drawn to. You don't see value in who you really are. And that insecurity is far more unattractive than any physical sign of aging could ever be. Remember Carmen? She also began obsessively altering her appearance. Botox, fillers, a wardrobe makeover that skewed much younger. She even began using slang and references to seem in touch, but all of it backfired. But because she was no longer rooted in herself, she was performing, hiding, adjusting, and Andres felt it. The woman he had originally been drawn to had vanished beneath the performance. So what's the solution? Radical authenticity. The most attractive women in these relationships are the ones who own their age without apology, who smile when asked how old they are, who speak of their experiences with calm pride, who don't flinch when someone mentions older woman or age gap, because they don't see it as a problem. Let me tell you about Isabel. Isabel is 47. She met Leo, a 31-year-old entrepreneur, at a networking event. From the beginning, Isabel made no attempt to hide who she was. When Leo asked her age, she smiled and said, "I'm 47, and every single year has taught me something. I wouldn't trade for anything." Then she shifted the conversation to what excites her now: her photography, her travels, her curiosity about life, her beauty, though she was stunning. It was her ease, the comfort she had in her own skin, the way she didn't try to convince him of anything, the way she didn't flinch when life came up naturally in the conversation. That's the power of true confidence. When you radiate the message, "This is who I am," they lean in, they become curious, because what's rare in the world today isn't youth, it's self-assurance. Trying to mimic youth sends the message that, in addition to her overcompensating with achievements, not because looking great is a problem, Leo later told her that what attracted him most wasn't, or her accomplishments, though she had plenty. "And I like who I am," people respond to it. They lean in. They become curious, because what's rare in the world today isn't youth, it's self-assurance. Now that we've explored the destructive effects of caretaking and overcompensation, let's turn our focus to something even more subtle, and in many ways, more corrosive to romantic chemistry: emotional overavailability, excessive seriousness, and the instinct to control the experience. These behaviors often stem from a well-meaning place. You care, you want to nurture a connection. You want to give the relationship a chance to bloom. But what you may not realize is that in trying to make yourself easy to love, you may be removing the very ingredients that make you desirable in the first place. Let's begin with availability. You meet a younger man who excites you. He texts you. You reply right away. He wants to meet. You clear your calendar. He suggests something spontaneous. You say yes, even if it derails your plans. At first it feels like enthusiasm, like you're being responsive and open. But slowly, without realizing it, you begin to orbit around his rhythm. This is the dynamic that slowly turns spark into smother. When you make yourself too available, always eager, always affirming, always rearranging your life to accommodate his, the message you send, whether you realize it or not, is, my time is not as valuable as yours. And here's where many women misinterpret male psychology. You may believe that being so loving, so available, so attuned to his needs will make you unforgettable. But attraction doesn't thrive in constant affirmation. It thrives in tension, space, and a feeling of earning each other's attention. Think about it. When something is always available, always within reach, always agreeable, it stops feeling exciting. It becomes predictable, easy, and in romantic energy, easy is the opposite of magnetic. Let me give you a real-life example. Marina, 46, started dating Luca, a 30-year-old musician. Their first few dates were fire, playful, intense, unpredictable. But after a few weeks, Marina started becoming too perfect. She responded to every message instantly. She complimented everything Luca did. She began canceling her own plans to be with him whenever he was free. At first, Luca was flattered. Then, something shifted. He started taking longer to respond. He didn't seem as curious or engaged. Marina felt confused. But I'm giving him everything, she said. Exactly, everything. With no tension. No chase, no contrast. Luca didn't lose interest because Marina was older. He lost interest because he stopped feeling the thrill of earning her. And this brings us to a truth that often goes unspoken. The more you abandon your own rhythm for someone else, the less desirable you become. Now let's talk about seriousness. Many mature women, especially those who've faced responsibilities, like raising children, leading a career, surviving divorce, have built identities based on competence and control. They've had to. It's how they navigated the storms of life. But the problem arises when this control and seriousness becomes their default energy in dating. They believe they must project respectability, rationality, strength. And while these are all powerful traits, too much seriousness kills the vibe. It removes the playfulness, the mystery, the laughter, the shared joy, the exact emotional notes that spark and sustain attraction. Here's what many don't realize. Younger men are already surrounded by seriousness. Jobs, expectations, family pressures. What they crave in a romantic partner is something that feels lighter, not shallow, but alive, playful, emotional, spontaneous. Someone who can inspire fun, laughter, sensuality, but with the grounded energy that only a mature woman can bring. Think about this. Are you always the one steering the conversation to serious topics? Do you find yourself correcting him, educating him, or defaulting to formality in your tone? Are you more focused on being taken seriously than being felt deeply? Let me introduce you to Patricia. Patricia, 51, had rebuilt her life post-divorce. She ran a successful consultancy and was known in her circle for being the smart, solid one. When she began dating Roberto, a vibrant 36-year-old adventurer, she approached it the same way she approached everything, with structure. She organized their dates, managed their plans, offered wise perspectives. She was thoughtful, poised, and always in control. And yet, Roberto felt nothing. It's like we're business partners, he later admitted. Everything makes sense, but nothing moves me. Do you see what happened? In trying to show up as responsible, rational, and emotionally contained, Patricia forgot to bring her sensuality, her playfulness, her energy. She was being a CEO, not a woman. That spark, that thing younger men crave from mature women, it's not found in order. It's found in emotional richness, unpredictability, and embodied confidence. It's found in the woman who can lead a board, meeting by day and dance barefoot. under the stars by night. It's not about being less serious. It's about being more human. Now let's tie in the final piece of this part. Emotional control. This is a tricky one, because it masquerades as strength. Many mature women have experienced emotional pain, rejection, abandonment, betrayal. They've learned to protect themselves by managing emotions with an iron grip. They don't want to appear needy. They don't want to scare him off. So they suppress, withdraw, analyze, calculate. They play the game of forced indifference. You know what I mean. Waiting a few hours before replying to a text. Not because you're busy, but because you're playing cool. Pretending you don't care when you actually do. Acting as though his presence means nothing to you. It's a defense mechanism. It's self-protection. But here's the paradox. Emotional suppression doesn't communicate confidence. It communicates disconnection. You're not showing independence. You're showing detachment. You're not being hard to get. You're just being hard to feel. You want to know what real emotional strength looks like? It's the ability to express genuine interest without neediness. To say, I enjoy being around you, without expectation. To let someone know they matter, not because you need them to validate you, but because you're generous with your heart. You see, mature women have something younger women rarely do: emotional depth. Emotional courage. When that's shared authentically, without fear or strategy, it's incredibly attractive to a man still trying to make sense of his emotional world. So many men, especially younger ones, are hungry for emotional honesty. Not intensity, not drama. Just someone real. Someone who makes them feel seen and safe in their own emotional expression too. And that's your power. You don't need to fake indifference. You don't need to play games. What makes you magnetic is your ability to connect, fully, truthfully, and with an open heart that doesn't beg or barter, but offers. By now we've seen how overcompensation, caretaking, seriousness, and emotional control gradually chip away at what makes you truly captivating. But let's shift the focus, because this is where things get exciting. Because once you stop trying to be desirable and start allowing yourself to be seen, your full, rich, sensual, emotionally alive self, everything changes. And it starts with a question most women have stopped asking themselves. Am I allowing myself to be a sensual woman? Or am I hiding behind roles? Let's pause there. Because this isn't about sex. It's about energy. Sensuality isn't defined by what you wear, what you say, or how you flirt. It's defined by your aliveness, your responsiveness, your ability to feel and enjoy the moment fully. Many mature women have unconsciously shut this part of themselves down. Why? Because they were too busy being the responsible one, the mother, the caregiver, the leader. Or because at some point, someone made them feel that sensuality had an expiration date. But here's the truth. There is nothing more magnetic than a woman who owns her sensuality without apology. Let me introduce you to Valeria. Valeria was 49 when she met Matteo, a 33-year-old filmmaker. She had been divorced for almost a decade, and had focused all her energy on her career and raising 2 children. She hadn't worn lipstick in years, hadn't gone dancing, hadn't flirted or even let herself feel wanted. But something about Matteo unlocked something in her. He was playful, curious, attentive, and for the first time in a long while, Valeria felt herself responding, not in a rushed, performative way, but slowly, richly, with presence. One evening, over wine and music, she started to talk, not about her job, not about her responsibilities, but about the version of herself she missed. The wild-hearted girl who once traveled Europe alone, with just a backpack and a camera. The one who danced until sunrise on beaches in Portugal. The one who once got lost on purpose just to find something new. And Matteo listened. Not because the stories were extraordinary, but because Valeria was extraordinary in how she told them. Her eyes lit up, her voice softened. Her whole being became a living memory of adventure, risk, and intimacy with life. That night wasn't about seduction. It was about vulnerability, vitality, and that's what made her irresistible. Let's unpack why this worked, and why most women unknowingly suppress this energy. The moment you shift into presentation mode, where everything is calculated, polished, and controlled, you block spontaneity. But when you're playful, curious, open, when you're willing to be in the moment, to laugh, to let go of the script, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is magnetic. Why? Because it creates emotional contrast. You're not always composed, not always the expert, not always the one in control. Sometimes you giggle, sometimes you tease, sometimes you lean in and whisper something unexpected. That's where the heat is. That's where connection deepens. And guess what? Younger men crave that emotional range. They're not looking for someone who teaches them. They're looking for someone who feels with them. Someone who inspires emotion, not through manipulation, but through authenticity. And here's something many women underestimate: storytelling. The ability to share a piece of yourself in a way that draws someone into your world, not with the goal of impressing, but with the intention of connecting, is one of your most powerful tools. But again, not all storytelling is equal. There's a difference between saying, "I've traveled a lot," and telling someone about the time you got caught in a thunderstorm in Bali and danced in the rain with strangers, or the first time you stood in front of a painting that moved you to tears, or the moment you realized you'd survived something you thought would break you. The details matter. Your emotion matters. When you tell stories like that, you're not just sharing events. You're revealing your essence, your heart, your values, your sense of wonder. And that creates emotional intimacy, far deeper than any resume or curated online profile ever could. Let me tell you about Elena, a woman you met briefly in part 1. At 46, she had gone through a difficult divorce and raised 2 kids. When she met Marcos, a 33-year-old engineer, she didn't try to act younger. She didn't hide her story. Instead, she shared it, not as a confession, not to earn sympathy, but as a part of who she was. She talked about the sleepless nights, the times she had to be both mother and father, the fear, the growth, and the grace. She didn't present herself as a victim. She didn't sugarcoat. She spoke with a kind of quiet strength that left Marcos in awe, not because she had suffered, but because she had integrated her experiences. That's the difference between telling a story and inhabiting it. And when a woman does that, when she brings her lived experience into the room not as a burden, but as a gift, she becomes unforgettable. Because what do you think a younger man really wants when he seeks out a mature woman? He wants to learn how to live more fully, how to feel more deeply, how to be present with someone who isn't performing, pretending or pleasing, but simply being. He doesn't want a life coach, or a guardian, or a girl pretending to be 25 again. He wants a woman who knows herself. And here's the nuance. He may not be able to put it into words. He may not even realize why he's so drawn to you. But he'll feel it when you speak truthfully. He'll feel it when you smile with your whole face, when you pause before answering, when you walk into a room not to be noticed, but because you belong there. That's the woman who lingers in his memory, not because she played hard to get, or wore the right dress, or quoted something clever, but because she made him feel something he didn't even know he was looking for. And so, dear reader, let me remind you, you don't need to out-youth anyone. You don't need to prove you're still desirable. You don't need to constantly talk about what you've done to earn attention. You are the attention. You are the presence. You are the story. We've come a long way. You now understand why performing, proving, caretaking, and emotional overavailability slowly unravel the possibility of something deep and lasting with a younger man. You've seen how radiance, sensuality, and authenticity, not youth or perfection, are the real keys to attraction. But now comes the part that ties it all together, the root of your power, and the deepest truth most women don't fully claim. Your magnetism doesn't come from what you do. It comes from who you are when you've stopped trying to earn love and started living from a place of emotional abundance. Let me say that again. When you no longer seek validation from a man, and instead share your life from a place of fullness, everything shifts. Because here's what few people will tell you. The women who attract and keep younger men in meaningful, passionate relationships are not lucky. They're not trying harder. And they're not doing mental gymnastics to stay desirable. They're simply so rooted in themselves that the right kind of man feels both challenged and invited by their energy. Let's take a moment and revisit the story of Adriana, the 52-year-old woman who had built a career, raised her children, and survived a serious illness. When she met Julian, a 35-year-old man, she didn't hide her story. She didn't ask for admiration or pity. She lived her life in full color and allowed him to step into her orbit. Julian didn't fall for Adriana because she was older. He fell for her because she radiated something he'd rarely encountered: clarity. She didn't second-guess herself. She didn't apologize for her life, her age, or her past. She embodied the kind of woman who had nothing to prove, and because of that, she was completely unforgettable. This is what we mean by wholeness. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means you're no longer seeking someone to fill a void. You're not auditioning for love. You're not adjusting your personality to keep someone's attention. You're simply living your life fully. And if someone wants to be part of it, they're invited, not required. Now think about how different that energy is. When a woman is still trying to measure up, a man feels it. Even if she never says it, her energy says, "Am I enough? Do you still want me? Should I try harder?" But when she's truly at peace with herself, the energy is completely different. It says, "This is who I am. I know I bring something rare. I'm open to love, but I'm not hungry for it." And that energy, calm, grounded, self-possessed, is magnetic. It draws in not just any man, but the right kind of man. A man who isn't intimidated by your fullness. A man who wants to rise to meet your depth. So how do you step into this wholeness? Let's break it down into a few simple but powerful shifts. 1. Shift from performance to presence. Stop editing yourself. Stop filtering your stories, your laughter, your quirks. Stop anticipating what will impress him and simply be present. Real presence is rare. Most people are in their heads, planning what to say next, calculating the effect they're having. When you're fully present, you create an environment where intimacy can breathe. That's what men remember. That's what creates lasting connection. 2. Shift from seeking to sharing. You are not a beggar at the table of love. You are the table. You don't need to seek love as if it's something scarce. Instead, treat your love, your time, your attention as something you choose to share, from abundance. This subtle mindset shift changes the entire dynamic. You're not waiting for someone to choose you. You're choosing to. 3. Shift from apology to celebration. Every line on your face, every year behind you, every heartbreak you've survived, that's not a flaw. That's evidence of a life lived. Wear it. Speak about your life with pride, not defensiveness. Speak about your age with joy, not embarrassment. And speak about your desires with clarity, not hesitation. When you stop apologizing for your experience and start celebrating it, you give him permission to love all of you. 4. Shift from control to surrender. Stop trying to control the outcome. You don't need to predict where it's going, what he's thinking, or what might go wrong. Stay rooted in your own rhythm. Let the connection unfold organically. Trust yourself to respond in the moment, because spontaneity is where chemistry lives. Trying to manage the entire experience kills mystery. It kills discovery. When you allow space for life to surprise you, love has room to enter. 5. Shift from approval to alignment. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to be loved by someone who sees you, really sees you. That doesn't require universal approval. It requires alignment. That means being yourself so the people who align with you can actually find you. Let go of the need to be digestible to everyone. You don't need to be less. You need to be true. Let me close with this. A younger man who is truly drawn to a mature woman isn't looking for his mother. He's not looking for someone to fix him, finance him, or impress him with her career. He's looking for something real, and he senses that he won't find it with someone still figuring out who she is. He's drawn to the woman who knows, who feels, who leads without dominating, who receives without shrinking, who desires without begging. He's drawn to the woman who wakes up in the morning not asking, "What do I need to do to be loved today?" but saying, "I love who I am and I'm open to sharing that love with someone who's worthy of it." That's the woman who turns heads without trying. That's the woman who inspires loyalty without demanding it. That's the woman who makes a younger man feel like he just stepped into a world he never knew he was missing. And now that he's tasted it, he doesn't want to go back. So let me leave you with this one truth to carry forward. Your age is not a problem. It's your power. Your years are not baggage. They are gifts. And the moment you stop seeing them as liabilities and begin to embody the wisdom, sensuality, and self-respect they've given you, you stop trying to be chosen. Instead, you become the choice.